Okay. Hi, I'm Siggy, and I've been playing Warframe for quite a while now. I have a few thousand hours in the game across 3 different platforms, and I've been a part of this community since I think like 2015. Ever since some of my friends got me into the game when they started playing it on PlayStation, like so long ago. This video is like basically a rant, but I want to try and frame it as a discussion if I can. Because obviously, this game, I mean, it sounds dumb to say this about a free to play video game, but this game really does mean a lot to me. And part of why that is that there aren't many other games like Warframe out there. And I say that specifically because so much of this game and what makes it what it is the community and how they interact with the dev team and each other. And this is a sentiment you'll find pretty much anywhere you see Warframe content. The community is the soul of this game. As much as that is a wonderful thing, and there are genuinely a lot of really great people in the Warframe community that make it a game worth playing and worth sinking thousands of hours, and I don't even want to think about how much money that I've put into this game. But it does have problems that really, really bother me, and I really felt a need to get some of this off of my chest in some kind of public way because there are people that talk about this stuff, but sometimes I feel like they can go about it in the wrong way and it kind of comes off as disingenuous, or a lot of times it just gets buried. And this will probably get buried too. I'm by no means any kind of big content creator, obviously, but I just want to add something to the conversation or start that conversation for people who aren't part of it already. And it's gonna sound like, as kind of clickbaity as this title can obviously be, I do love this game a lot, right? It means a lot to me, and I'm not here to trash on the game. If I hated this game and I thought it was bad because of all the things I'm going to talk about today, I would not still be playing it. That is plain and simple. I would not put my energy into a game if I did not love it, right? And the dev team itself is also great. They are another big reason why this game is so important to a lot of people. The dev team are good people. I love how they interact with the community. You do not get that in almost any other game. You see Steve and Rebecca doing dev shorts every week. That's the CEO of the company and the creative director for the game, interacting directly, interfacing with the community on a weekly basis. And that is very, very, very special. And it's because of how integral the community and the devs' interaction with the community and how integral that is to the game, that make these pitfalls, these little gaps where things could be better, feel so egregious. Is because they are part of the most important part of the game, really. So, everything I want you to think of that. Everything I say from this point on, this game is good, the community is good, but there are problems with it that I feel really need to be pointed out, and we need to find some kind of solution for it together, if at all possible. And just to kind of mention, I'm probably just going to put some like random gameplay and stuff behind me talking, so you don't like really have to pay attention to the video. If you don't want to, you can just kind of listen. A couple times I might like put a screenshot of like some specific comment that I'm talking up on the screen or a clip or something like that, but it doesn't really matter too much. So I've been talking a lot about the Warframe community. I promise I'm not going to go into a whole lore dump on the history of the game or whatever. I'm just going to go over this like super fast, right? But in the beginning, there was Dark Sector, right? Dark Sector was supposed to be a game for weird nerds who liked space and ninjas and stuff. Ultimately, that was dialed back a lot and turned into a much more of your average shooter game because of publishers and what they were and were not interested in pushing at the time. And so Digital Extremes obviously had to change the product, and we got the Dark Sector that we have today. Still a great game, not the original intention. Fast forward after Dark Sector, we have Warframe, which very much was a game for weird nerds, and still today, a lot of the community are weird nerds like me. And as much as that kind of sounds like I want to gatekeep this game, I absolutely don't, right? I love this game so much because of the sense of community, and I want more and more and more more people to be involved in that community and be involved in the game. I want people from different walks of life and different experiences to be part of this game. But recently I see more and more people in Warframe, and maybe sometimes it's people who were there for a long time. Sometimes it feels like people who don't get to this game for weird nerds, right? Basically, what it boils down to is a lot of queer phobia, a lot of queer phobia, and also weird right-wing takes, or not even right-wing takes, but anti-political takes, I guess I'll say. Anti-wokeness, as they, I don't know, some of these people would probably describe themselves. So I don't have a script for this, I just have like a very loose list of stuff that I want to hit. One of the first showcases of this I want to talk about is a very long-running joke in the Warframe community about the Warframe Nezha. Nezha, as a Warframe, comes to us from Galactic Armor, the Chinese build of the game, and is based off of Nezha from Chinese mythology. Nezha is inherently a male character who happens to be fairly petite and flamboyant, and of course this has triggered no end of jokes about Nezha's femininity and how that relates to his character and the people who play Nezha. I'm not gonna say the word that is most commonly associated with Nezha because I hate it. I cannot stand it. But as anyone who has played Warframe for any amount of time can probably tell you, Nezha is very infamous in this game for people making the same joke about him over and over again in region chat, to the point where it would get people banned from mentioning it. And they found new and creative ways to mention it to get around this until the system caught up and continued to ban people who would make the same joke. And if that's all it was, if all it was a dumb joke that people put in chat and then get banned from chat, maybe it wouldn't be as much of an issue. But it goes beyond that. I personally am a fan of Nezha. I like his design, I think it's cool, and I like the way he plays. He's a fun Warframe to play. However, I did not play Nezha for years, regardless of how much I wanted to play Nezha or not, simply because I despise the way that the community interacted with that frame and the people who play him. And I say this because anytime I said anything about Nezha, I would go into chat and try to ask people if they had any builds for Nezha. And suddenly, my DMs in-game would be filled with people just saying slurs. Queerphobic slurs, including the one that he's well known for, which I do consider a slur. I don't care, it's not funny, it's dumb, it's never been funny, it's a slur. It's homophobic and dumb. And I did not play Nezha for the longest time simply because I hated this kind of behavior and I did not want to invite it into my life just for playing a video game. Right? I don't feel like playing a character you like in a video game should inherently invite harassment. That's messed up. That does not sound like a healthy community. Now I have started playing Nezha more, mostly because I've learned, one, to like talk back to people who send me DMs, because I don't take their crap anymore. I will give it back. I don't care, and I hit a point where I just want to play what I want to play because it's fun, and I played this game to have fun. But it's still so weird to me that I didn't play this game the way I wanted to for years because of how the community would interact with me for doing so. And that's messed up for a game whose soul, as everyone would tell you, is the community itself. And now this used to be a thing that was restricted pretty much entirely to Warframe's region chat. And honestly, this is not really much of a problem because, to be frank, if you're playing Warframe and you don't have region chat disabled in your settings, you're playing the game wrong. Anyone who is on region chat or actually reads region chat is asking to be miserable at the end of the day. It's not a place anyone should go. And I feel like just that bit there is inherently a failure of the Warframe community. But if it was just in region chat, I can turn off region chat, I never have to see it again. That's not a problem. But more recently, I've been seeing more and more stuff like this. Not just Nezha, there's a whole bunch of other stuff we're going to get to. Stuff like this has been spreading to other places in the game. Like I said, I've received private messages from people in-game of just all kinds of vile, disgusting stuff. I see stuff pop up in trading chat and recruiting chat all the time. And it's baffling to me that people will get on to play this video game who's very much based around a loving and helpful community and just decide to spend their time just spewing vile stuff that nobody wants to see or listen to. It's weird to me that people would do that. And it's one of the biggest... It's almost a catch-22 about this game. You know, the Warframe community makes the game. They make the game as good as it is, and with their interaction with the devs. But then there's this whole part of the community that's awful and sucks to interact with. And so I don't feel like you should be forced into this choice of either interacting with the community that makes the game a lot better, because if you're playing by yourself, Warframe can be tedious and confusing a lot of time. If you're a newer player and you don't have friends who also play the game and already can tell you what to do to get through the game, it can be really overwhelming and confusing. So you want to have a sense of community in the game. But if you do start interacting with the community, you might run into these people in the community that are terrible, and that sucks. So, along with these old running jokes that people still think are funny for some reason, we also have this whole fringe group of people in Warframe who are very committed to this anti-woke or anti-political kind of mindset. I actually want to stop and talk about this a little bit more, because sometimes you'll come across Warframe players who say that they either don't want Warframe to become political and will claim that Warframe has never been a political game until now because we have gay characters in the game. And this is so nonsensical to me, because Warframe inherently, from the very start of the game, from the first time you pick your Warframe and start playing through the tutorial quest, it is an inherently very political and anarchist game. As soon as you wake up and pick your first Warframe, you immediately start fighting against two main factions, the Corpus and the Grineer. The Corpus are literally a cult devoted to money. You are fighting against capitalism. The Grineer are over-militaristic and just consume everything in their path. They are very fascistic. The Grineer especially, it's kind of sad and interesting because they were originally grown out of a group of oppressed laborers by the Orokin who rose in their own prominence after the Orokin fell, but ultimately were taken over by remnants of the Orokin, specifically, the two Grineer queens, who are Orokin, took over the Grineer and just ended up controlling them for their own ends. So the Grineer basically became just a newer reincarnation of the same fascistic mindset that the Orokin already had. So from the beginning of the game, you wake up and start fighting against fascism and capitalism. This game has always been political from the very start. Claiming that Warframe is not a political game or should not be a political game is stupid, and anyone with this opinion is immediately just invalidated. I want to point out one specific example of this, that a friend of mine was looking through Styanax's page on the Warframe wiki because she was grinding for Styanax. And there's a comment on this wiki page from a Warframe player that just says, "Is it me or is this frame kinda homoerotic? Maybe it's just the deluxe, I don't know." Now we have some responses. DE is full of woke. Recently, contents have showed it's not just you. What the fuck? DE is not woke, DE is just horny as hell. Have you seen that Ember Heirloom cake? The Devstream crew certainly has. Just ignore him, anyone who uses woke ironically isn't particularly bright. And first off, the first thing I want to say about this is I don't want to assume that these are straight cis men making these comments, but it kind of reads that way. And if you as a straight man look at Styanax in Warframe and think, is this homoerotic? You're probably not straight. I have news for you. Anyway, that aside, this is weird to me on a couple fronts. Saying that DE is full of woke is interesting. Yes, the dev team, the creators of this game, are very openly, queer friendly, right? We have canonically queer characters in the game that play very important roles in the story. Every year, Warframe has a Pride event where they give out cosmetics or things like that that show that this community is very welcoming to queer people, which is great. A lot of people don't like this because just inherently they think that queer people are evil and manipulative, or that Pride is this awful, shameful thing that is just trying to brainwash people into being queer, which dumb. Just don't even regard any of that nonsense. And then we get to the next comment here, which is even weirder, saying that DE is not woke, they're just horny. And while yes, I dare say that the Warframe community as a whole is pretty horny for robots, there's no problem with that, honestly. And the devs are honestly very aware of this, and they do play into it sometimes. But the fact that they specifically brought up the Ember Heirloom on DevStream and how they reacted to it on DevStream 180 is very interesting. Because, I mean, just look at this for a sec. What we see here is the dev team showing off Ember Heirloom, who is a very feminine, and this is a skin for a Warframe where the dev stream said, let's give this robot inherently feminine and attractive features that will draw people to this design. And that's fine. I don't think it's inherently super sexualized, but people can sexualize it if they want to on their own time, and that's fine. We see the dev team playing into the community's sexualization of their characters, and I think that's perfectly fine and healthy. But if you notice, the people who are primarily getting horny for Ember Heirloom are the two women we see on this dev stream, Megan and Rebecca. While the three men on this dev stream, including Steve, the CEO, they laugh at it, but clearly they are the ones feeling more uncomfortable with this sexualization of the character, to the point where Steve, the CEO, says, okay, I'm getting uncomfortable now. And they do move on, but we do hear Rebecca clearly say, oh, I'm not, which I think is very funny. So this commenter used this as an example to prove to how DE's not woke, just horny. And yet the horniness that we are being shown is very sapphic in nature and very queer. And I love that. This comment on this Steinax's wiki page is absurd. And it would be more hilarious to me to see this kind of absolute, just nonsensical misunderstanding of what Warframe is and how people think, if it wasn't indicative of a larger problem in the Warframe community, which is rampant queerphobia. I don't know why there's so much queerphobia in the Warframe community. It feels so completely out of place because, like I've said, the Warframe creators, the dev team themselves, are very openly queer friendly. We have queer and trans people who work on this game and appear on panels at TennoCon talking about the game, Warframe and Soulframe. Right? We have canonically queer characters in the game. The main example I'm going to talk about here is obviously Albrecht and Lloyd. If you played through Whispers in the Walls, the quest that released late last year, you will know that Lloyd was basically one of Albrecht's closest confidants and also his butler, basically. But through the events of the quest, we see very clearly that they are in love with each other and they had a relationship. It's kind of funny that I think this implies that Albrecht left his wife, Daggett, for Lloyd because he realized he was gay after Lloyd nursed him back to health after his terrible accident on a trip through the void. That aside, these characters are so very obviously gay, and yet people in the Warframe community will bend over backwards and jump through ridiculous flaming hoops to try and convince you that these characters are not gay and that Warframe does not and should not have any gay or queer characters. People will say that Albrecht and Lloyd have more of a Alfred and Batman kind of relationship, which is absolute nonsense. In the game, we clearly see in Albrecht's, as far as Lloyd knows, could be Albrecht's very last moments in this world, Albrecht cradles Lloyd's face in his hands and reassures him. And we see a callback to this same moment at the end of the quest where it is used to thwart the Indifference itself. This malevolous entity that has been built up for so long over the course of the game is thwarted by gay love. Right? This game is inherently queer and very much welcoming to queer people in the community. And yet we have part of the community itself that just completely rejects that. And it's so odd to me that if you do hold this kind of queerphobic view, why are you still playing this game that is so obviously very queer, has queerness baked into it, universe, in the characters, in the lore, and have a dev team that is very openly queer friendly and puts out Pride content every year? Why are you still playing this game then? If you hate the wokeness of DE so much, go play a different game. I am begging you. Another big showcase of this actually, when I talk about Albrecht and Lloyd, I talk about how baffled the queerphobic sentiments make me. It doesn't make sense to my brain. This next bit I'm going to talk about actually makes me it makes me very upset. This year, me and some of my friends spent our Thursday watching TennoCon live. And because of this, I was obviously watching the Twitch chat while it was happening. And a lot of the comments I saw on this Twitch chat at TennoCon were absolutely disgusting and hateful. I first saw some signs of it during the Warframe dev stream that happened at TennoCon, where we had queer and trans people on the panel talking about this game that looked really promising. And there were some signs in the chat that we were going to have some very queerphobic, transphobic sentiments going forward. And this worried me for what my experience of the rest of this TennoCon was going to be like. And then we got to the cosplay contest, and it got so much worse. Not just queerphobia, transphobia, but also a lot of fat shaming, which fucking... It sucks. Okay, it sucks. This is the most disappointed I've ever been in the Warframe community, just watching TennoCon with my friends and seeing the Twitch chats go by. During the cosplay contest, we had some really cool creators who wanted to come up and show off their projects. Some that would be deemed overweight, and Twitch chat immediately latched onto them and started talking about how fat they were, and that they thought it was hilarious. Now we had this cosplayer come up in her personal Nova Grax fashion that she has in-game. And while presenting her fashion, she talked about how she was inspired to make it because of how she basically came out as trans this year. And as soon as she said that, my heart simultaneously was warm and bright and full of happiness that this person felt brave enough to come out on stage and talk about this, because that's amazing. As another trans person, I was ecstatic to see this. Simultaneously, my heart sank because I knew exactly how the Twitch chat was going to react, and they followed through. Instantly, I saw so many slurs and rude comments just flash across my screen. Tons of them. Too many to where they couldn't be fully offset with all the pride hearts that I saw going by. And this nearly killed my enjoyment of watching the rest of TennoCon. Whether it was a trans person coming out on stage while showing off their cosplay, or just people who were a little overweight, who still looked good in their cosplays and wanted to show off the cool work they did, which I appreciate. These people in chat were being awful. And this is the kind of behavior from this community that I can't stand and I need to see corrected in some way. Like, I'm begging at this point for us as a community or the developers to come down on this kind of behavior, because I don't think this has any kind of place in this game. And this is where I want to shift focus from talking about the Warframe community to the Warframe developers. Gamers like these, who live to spread inflammatory comments and just generally be a pain in the ass for everyone around them, will always exist. It's one of the worst things about playing video games in general, is that these kind of trolls, or whatever you want to call them, will pretty much always be around. The main way that we combat this kind of behavior is with the developers' help. So we have to look at how the developers respond to this kind of behavior. I think a good way to segue into this is to actually talk about a recent tweet that Sabuchi made a couple of days ago from when I'm recording this, saying, "I get unfollowed by every DE staff member for saying Yarly mating press and being critical, but an ex-partner is currently complaining about race mixing and how all gays are groomers but gets to keep them. I should be more racist." Now, to be completely fair, Sabuchi's thing of like constantly talking about Yarly mating press to like every DE staff member he can get a hold of is weird and, you know, a kind of harassment, which is not okay. While it is rooted in like that kind of harmless horniness that is very rampant in the Warframe community, it is still indicative of other kind of creeps in the community, like Pupsker. To be clear, I'm not like trying to accuse Pupsker or Sabuchi of anything or start any kind of witch hunt. Just personally, Pupsker's content is weird and uncomfortable for me. This does still bring up a very good point of how people in the Warframe community do and say terrible things, and they really face no kind of consequences, and DE still seemingly supports people like this, and that's not okay. And scrolling through more of Sabuchi's Twitter, you'll see him going on and on more about other people in the Warframe community being very queerphobic and saying more of this kind of stuff. And I do appreciate him bringing up issues like that because it is very important, obviously. That's why I'm making this in the first place. Now I want to go back to the Nezha situation. As is very clear to everyone who plays Warframe, if you make the joke about Nezha that everyone knows in chat, you will immediately get banned from region chat. And you might want to look at that and say, obviously the devs are responding to this behavior and saying that they don't want to see this kind of thing in game and that people are being punished for it. Unfortunately, I don't really feel like that is the case. I look at this and ultimately it seems to be more of a response to people spamming this comment in chat rather than actually responding to the contents of the comment itself. And you might ask whether that really makes any difference since anyone who comments this is getting banned and therefore is no longer being a problem. And I say that this does matter because the reason I know it's probably because of the spam and not the actual intent of these comments is because I still see more comments in other chats that are not getting banned. I have been sitting in my orbiter trying to find relic squads to farm for primes in recruiting chat and seen people commenting in recruiting chat just blatantly throwing around slurs, saying things like all queer people are r-slur or stupid T-slurs, just awful stuff. Stupid comments that don't say anything other than you are a bad person. And yet, when these comments come through chat, they don't get deleted. And as far as I could tell, the people who are making these comments are not getting banned from chat. They are just allowed to exist in recruiting chat, which is not even the correct channel for people to just have general discussions and conversations about the game. This is a specific purpose chat channel. And people are still coming in and spreading nonsense, and nothing is being done about it. And this is disappointing on a lot of levels. Because the dev team is so transparent with their support for the queer community and how welcome they are of having a diverse player base, it sucks to see them not doing anything about things like this. And as a queer trans person, it does diminish my enjoyment of the game. It's hard to joke and laugh and have a good time with my friends when I see slurs constantly just for existing in the game and trying to play the game and interact with the community. That really hurts me as a player. And this was ever more so evident with all those TennoCon Twitch chat comments that I was talking about before. Obviously, in that case, Twitch chat can be a lot harder to control. Moderators do help, but ultimately there are too many people and too many messages being sent in very quick succession for them to really do anything about it very effectively. Ultimately, what I would like to see from the devs is a message of direct condemnation of this kind of behavior from players. And I can understand if it seems like I am asking too much from a team of developers that is ultimately a small company, and like I've already said, already does so much to interact with their community. And I understand that asking this may be asking the devs to stretch themselves a little bit too thin. But really, I think that in a game that thrives so much because of its community, and has devs that always talk about how much the community means to their game, and how the community built up this game to what it is now, I feel like you have to make that community better. Like, if you want to be welcoming to all kinds of people, you have to make sure that your community is welcoming to people. And when I see things like this, all it does is make me feel like the community does not want me to be a part of it. A community that I have been a part of for years at this point. As I've said, I generally love this game. I've sunk so much of my time and money into it because I know that it is a good product and it's a fun game for me to play, and I love the devs that make it and I love interacting with them. I just wish that the developers could find a way to do more to make it where I don't feel ostracized for trying to play a game that means so much. If there are any DE employees that do see this video for whatever reason, I'm sorry if it does feel like I'm asking a lot of you, and I can understand that. But I want you to know that these are the kinds of things that I think about every time I log on to play Warframe, because they are always in the peripheral. In a game that is so much driven by its community, you cannot ignore the negative aspects of that community because they will always be present for as long as they are allowed to be. And obviously, I want to say that my heart goes out to all of the queer and trans employees at D-Heat who also have to put up with all this nonsense while trying to work on these games. They do not deserve that kind of hate, and no one deserves that kind of hate. Whether or not you think that I'm asking too much from the developers of this free-to-play game is ultimately up to you. All I want to do is talk about a problem that this community is facing and why I think it really needs to be addressed. Other than that, I honestly don't really have many solutions to offer for this. Maybe you could try to set up some kind of team of moderators for chat, but that could be too much and too hard to deal with. I understand that. Warframe is a very big game at this point, and the developers are constantly working on the next update, and some of the updates that are right around the corner, like Lotus Eaters or 1999 later this year, look to be very, very big updates, and I'm sure that a lot of work is having to go into that right now. Could DE implement some kind of player-based moderating system? Potentially, but then you have to worry about whether those players are going to be online, whether those players are trustworthy, and that makes a whole mess of things and adds an entirely new layer of complications and micromanagement that has to go on at DE. I think ultimately one of the best ways that we can combat this is to come together as a community and decide that we are not going to put up with this anymore, because this game is very much driven by the community. So if we as players can say that we don't want this in our game and take steps to make sure that this stuff isn't in the game anymore, then we can solve the problem. Players are the one that constantly push this game to be better. It happened with Zoran coptering into the new parkour system. It happened with the monetization of Warframe getting better and better over time. Who's to say we can't make our own community better as players? Even then, this kind of call to action is really only as effective as the algorithm will deign it to be. I am not an established content creator. There's no guarantee that this will make the rounds on the internet and that anyone will ever see it. And even if people do see it, there's no guarantee that those people will feel any kind of obligation to actually help out with this. At this point, I've said all that I really have to say about this topic, and I know that this has been a very negative video of talking about a lot of negative topics, but I do want to reiterate that this game and its community and its developers really do mean a lot to me. Warframe has been a mainstay in my life for years now that I've always been able to go back to. And if this community could become a better home for its players, then I feel like the game would immediately become leagues better than it is already. So with all that said, all I can really leave you with is please keep playing Warframe, and please be good to each other while you do it. Have a good rest of your day or night or week, and thanks for watching.